Hey guys, welcome back to First and 10 over here on Clueless Gamers. Of course, I'm your host Pete, joined in a second as always by my co-host Brian. Guys, welcome in. We're filming a little bit earlier in the week because there's a lot of things we have going on this week and this weekend. And one of those things is the Mets playoffs. How about that win tonight? 7-2, beating the Phillies, Game 3, NLDS. Bry, I'll shoot it over to you real quick before we get to football because, of course, that's what this podcast is. You're going to Game 4, my man, tomorrow. How you feeling?
I am very much looking forward to it. It will be my first ever Met playoff game in attendance, so very pumped up, and obviously a chance to close out the Phillies in this division series that they came in heavily underdogs in the series. I mean, it was something like a 2-1 Philly favorite,
Yeah,
but going in, I had to say I was like reasonably confident. This
me
team
too,
just
actually.
seems to have, and that's saying something.
Yeah,
And this team, it just seems to have some magic dust to them right now, where
yeah,
they can seemingly do no wrong. They're never out of it. They play till the very last out, which seems to be a cliche, but this
they
team
really
really
do.
embodies that. And so, we'll see what happens tomorrow. But another win in the books today. We were fortunate to be able to watch it together, so we had an enjoyable time. And now we fast forward a little bit, and we're here ready to do another show for another week. So looking forward to talking some more football.
Well said. Huge potential chance to close out the series. Go Mets. They need to do it. Want to close it out in New York. Hail Grimace. That's what I'm saying out here. But let's cut it over to some football. Bry, of course, we've been very consistent talking about stuff. And you know what? This week ended up working out perfectly because we're filming on a Tuesday where gigantic news broke in the NFL. And that's, of course, where we're starting off today's show. Bry, your very own New York Jets have become or fallen victim to the first head coaching firing. Robert Saleh relieved of his duties about afternoonish wise around that time or close to noon or so. There's been multiple reports, some supposedly fact, and then they're debunked. There's a lot of misinformation going on right now. But what it seems to be is the owner Woody Johnson was solely in on relieving Saleh, met with him in his office. Apparently, Saleh was stunned per reports, and he left the building, packed up his stuff, and that was it. They of course had another loss, back-to-back losses over in London this past Sunday when they lost to the Vikings. Vikings, hey, they're an excellent team. There's no shame in losing to them. But I guess Woody Johnson had seen enough. He turns over the keys to Jeff Ulbrich, the defensive coordinator, who's now the defensive coordinator slash head coach, former NFL linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers. And, we were just looking up his kind of coaching resume before this. He's been in a lot of stops, UCLA, the Atlanta Falcons, Seahawks, all this stuff, but he's never had these kind of duties. And now you're taking over a 2-3 Jets team that, through all the strife that has gone on, including this head coaching firing, Monday night, they play the Buffalo Bills literally for the division to choose who is at the top of that division. That's how kind of poor the AFC East has been in the early part of the season. I'll say no more. I'm going to cut it over to you, man. Jets fan you are, huge Jets fan. What's your first reaction to your head coach getting fired today?
Yeah, I mean, I woke up to the news today, and admittedly, I don't know that I'd say shocked, but I'd say quite surprised. I mean, I was not expecting it at this juncture. I mean, I think we talked about it on the show here that it's something that as the losses piled up, or if they would going forward into the season, that a coaching change could be in the offing. But this early in the season, I wasn't expecting it, so I was quite surprised. But I have to say, I can't blame the organization for this decision. I mean, I think it goes beyond just the 2-3 this year, and you look at
Yeah.
his coaching tenure as a whole here, and the record is not impressive. It's 20-36. I mean, it's nearly double the amount of losses, and that's just not going to get it done. And now you go into a season where the expectations are ratcheted up, have Aaron Rodgers, you're in very much a win now mode, according to the owner and,
Yeah.
of course, the fan base. And so to see slow starts in games, the miscommunications that we've documented between Rodgers and Saleh. I think it all just kind of came to a head and decision. And to me, making it this early shows that Woody Johnson and company believe this season is salvageable.
Yeah,
That with Ulbrich,
absolutely.
there's going to be a renewed energy, and that it's still early enough where they can turn things around and have the kind of season that they want to. And I don't think that was going to be the case where they were going with Salah. Um, I still think the team that while it is talented, I think it's deficient in a lot of areas, and I'm not sure that a coaching change is going to change anything real drastically, to be honest. So that's kind of where I'm at with the team right now. I mean, like you said, the game coming up is a big one. I can't say I go into it confident that they're going to win just because I think there's too many issues with the team right now. But, Salah clearly wasn't getting it done. And, like I said, I'm surprised that it happened this early, but I do understand, where they came from the top with this decision.
Yeah, I can't. I've been scratching my brain, and we were talking when we were hanging out during the commercials of the Mets game of like what has been the successes of teams during the season that got interim coaches. How many made the playoffs? And we were discussing that. And it is very few and far between. I think it ended in
Yeah.
around something like four, if you want to count Rich Bisaccia, even though Gruden technically resigned. He was an interim head coach that did end up going to the playoffs that season. It's a very small list. I mean, teams typically, when you have an in-season firing and you bring in kind of an interim head coach, it's a waving of the white flag. I don't think that's the case here with the Jets, as you said. I do think they believe the season is salvageable, and it all comes down to Monday night. I mean, what's going to happen there? What's going to happen in games after that? Can Ulbrich get this team together and have a renewed energy? And I think I was still shocked by the news, especially this soon, but we
Mhm.
seen the writing on the wall, like you said, we've been talking about. But Quinton Williams he gave an interview right after the game, I believe, or maybe it was Quincy Williams. It was one of the Williams' brothers. I believe it was Quincy actually Williams,
Yeah.
and he gave an interview right after the game and said that he's sick of all the nonsense, that it's the continual same old thing, and players and people in the organization have to be held accountable. And I thought that spoke volumes of it felt like a direct shot at the coaching staff, which leads all the way up to Robert Saleh, of like guys across the board have been getting away with things and haven't been pushed, or guys haven't been sat if they're playing poorly or something. Like there's something amiss in this locker room, and then hell, the next day and a half later, Salah ends up getting relieved of his duties there. I think the notion of, oh, Rodgers, he was in on it, it was this, that, I don't believe any of that stuff. I think Woody Johnson made that decision. Apparently, Joe Douglas, the GM, didn't know either. But Woody Johnson has eyes. I think he's seen the awkward interactions between Salah and Rodgers. He had heard the noise. He probably has his own sources, obviously, since he owns the team in the building. And he took a lay of the landscape and he said, hey, we have a window here next year, maybe this year, maybe next year. That's it. We can't waste time. Now, I was an advocate of, and I believe you were in the same boat, of getting rid of Salah last year and just starting anew. They chose to not do that, and
Mhm.
they're going to pay the price now. And I also want to dispel the very unlikely scenarios. There's been a lot of people out there, even in the media, talking about, oh, could they get Vrabel? Could they get Belichick right now, like in the season? That's not happening. That's not happening. Even if they became the head coach next season, there's too much turnover to have. This is not like a player coming over in a trade deal. A head coach sets the entire way of the organization, the game plans, everything. Their voice is what matters. You can't have a guy step into a coaching staff that he hasn't picked, that's from the last head coach, in the middle of the season and expected to perform there. It's not possible. I don't even know how the legality of the contract would work. There's too much amiss there. So those things need to be. They're riding with Ulbrich the rest of the season, and we'll have to see what happens with this Jets team.
Yeah, and I think another point too to remember is that Woody Johnson is not the one who made the Salah hire to begin with. Remember, he was
Yes.
serving overseas as an ambassador, and his brother Christopher is the one who made the hire of Robert Salah. So there was no direct tie to the lead owner in Woody. And so, clearly I don't think he was enamored with what he saw there and, decided to make the change. But one other thing before we get on to a couple other teams from last week while we're on the Jets topic, because there's been a lot of conversation about the potential of Devontae Adams in a
Yeah.
trade. My take is, before I let you give yours, of course he would help. He's a dynamic player. We know the kind of production he's put up throughout his career, but I think it only helps to an extent. I don't think it's
Yeah.
a game changer where it's like, a finishing piece that, they're Devontae Adams away from everything falling into place. It would
Yeah.
help the passing game. Certainly it would help Rodgers throwing to a guy has the familiarity he has with Adams like he does. There's too many things that are amiss with this offense.
Yeah.
Offensive line, Rodgers getting hit too much, and by the way, dealing with a couple of injuries
Low ankle
already.
sprain.
So I don't think he's not even a sure thing to go in the next game. I mean, he probably will play, but is he 100%? Probably not. So I think Adams would help, but I don't think it's like they get Adams and it's like, okay, everything's good
Right.
now. So, that's kind of where I stand on that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely think, I mean, look at Garrett Wilson last game, 22 targets. That's ridiculous. I mean, I think he ended up somewhere 11 or 12 catches for like 101 yards. They seem to still have a chemistry issue. They were really trying to force feed him, and he's really the only dynamic player on this offense. And that's no shot at Brees Hall. I'm sorry. It's just Garrett Wilson is the only guy that I feel like I'm going to trust on a week in and week out basis situation there. And Adams would certainly help. He has the rapport, he knows the hand signals, all that stuff would happen, but I don't know. This offensive line is weak. The run game has been very disappointing to what we expected, what most people expected, certainly what Jet fans expected coming into this. And we talked about this team, it lacks depth. Alan Lazar and these guys, like, it's not enough. Tyler Conklin doesn't scare you at tight end. There's not enough here on this offense. And Rodgers, outside of that Patriot game, Bri, let's be honest, he's looked like a 40-year-old quarterback. Not a Tom Brady 40-year-old quarterback. He's one of one. He's looked like what every other pretty much 40-year-old quarterback has looked like. And the way he's going, he's banged up, he's getting hurt. This season takes a tailspin. I won't be surprised if this is his last one.
I mean, the difference with that Patriot game when he played by far his best game is he really showed his full mobility. And it was like so many people were pointing out, he looks like the Rodgers of old, but he's not going to have that week in and week out at his age with the hits that he's taking. I mean, in the game in London the other day, when he got knocked out there, I thought he was going to be done for the game. It
I
looked
did
like
too.
potentially a significant injury there, and he kind of shook it off and ran right back in there. But clearly, he was hobbled a bit with the ankle, and we learned that he has a low ankle sprain now. So, yeah, he's taking too many hits, and at his age, already coming off a major injury, the signs just aren't good.
Yeah, and he's getting frustrated. We're seeing it. We've documented how we feel about Nat Hackett, and he's not a legitimate offensive coordinator you can lean on. There's a lot of problems there. There's a reason why even you as a Jets fan and I did not pick this team to make the playoffs, and it kind of seems like it's trending in that direction right now. But yeah, huge news. Robert Saleh, former head coach now of the New York Jets, was relieved of his duties today here on Tuesday. And Jeff Ulbrich, the defensive coordinator, is now the new interim head coach, leading the team into a critical division game here coming on Monday night for who's in first place in the division. Wow. Still pretty shocked by it, to be honest. Brian,
Yeah.
let's jump back to some games here in a little bit of lightning because we're short on time. Probably the game of the weekend, I think is fair to say, and maybe one of the games of the year. Baltimore Ravens, Cincinnati Bengals. Ravens knock off the Bengals in overtime, 41-38. There was no defense that was played in this game. Just an absolute light show by two fantastic quarterbacks. And you know what? I have pushed back a little bit this season on this podcast on Joe Burrow. You can't blame him for how he's playing right now, Bry. You could argue he might be playing the best of any quarterback in the league right now, and that includes Patrick Mahomes. 12 touchdowns, 2 picks, almost a 73% completion percentage. He's playing lights out right now. But when the margin of error is razor thin because your defense is that bad, You're not going to win games, and that's why the Bengals sit at 1-4. Their schedule hasn't been easy as well, and they get knocked off again. I think Lamar has improved to something like 5-1, I think, against Joe Burrow in his career. You could correct me if I'm wrong down below on that. And he gets the best of them here. A game that goes back and forth. They both have a critical turnover. They both make some Superman plays. All the guys you expect to kind of ball out do it. Henry, Zay Flowers, Higgins, Chase, they were all there. And in the end, the Ravens, after a missed field goal from the Bengals and a botched kind of snap, the Ravens end up winning this one on a Derrick Henry run and a Justin Tucker kick, and they improve to 3-2. Bri, what'd you make of this light show that happened over in Cincinnati?
Yeah, this was a wild one. I mean, there were a number of like crazy shootouts last week. You,
There
you
really
look at the
was.
Colts Jaguars game, 37-34. I mean, just a lot of really high scoring games, but of course none bigger than the Bengals and Ravens. And yeah, I mean, I picked Cincinnati in this game and I was feeling pretty good
You
about
were.
it. I mean, they were leading most of the way. They had a double-digit lead. I think they were up by 10 even as late as the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So it looked like they were going to steal one in the division. And I mean, this was one that just kind of went back and forth with both quarterbacks just putting on a show. I mean, making some of the best plays you'll see. And I mean, Lamar was just
Dude,
phenomenal
dude,
with
that
some of the
play
plays
when they
he
were
made.
down 10, that play that he made on the botch snap, he runs out stiff arm Sam Hubbard, throws back across his body like 20 yards into the end zone and likely is there. I mean, that's insane. Like I feel like the only other person that could truly do that is Mahomes. Like that's crazy stuff what he did.
And Burrow was matching him and even better than him. I mean, with 5 touchdowns and threw one to Chase like right before the end of the half, where it looked like they would just try to get into field goal range,
Yeah.
and Burrow was like, "No, we're scoring a touchdown
Yeah.
here," and he hits Chase. And then in the second half, Chase again on a catch and run on what was like a 10-yard pass that he turns and
Yeah.
runs all the way to the end zone. So he just had a crazy game. I mean, 193 yards, 2 touchdowns. Burrow goes for 5 scores, nearly 400 yards. But I mean, at some point, you got to play a lick of defense. I mean, we know that both of these offenses are talented, but especially, I mean, really both teams, it's a disappointing effort. Like,
Yeah,
if
the Ravens didn't
Baltimore
play
is
well
going to
either.
be a
Yeah.
Super Bowl, right? I mean, if they're going to be a Super Bowl team, it's all well and good that they can put up these gaudy offensive numbers, but they theoretically have a good defense. They
Yeah.
have good personnel on that side of the ball. And I mean, they were just getting lit up in this game, couldn't stop anything. They were just lucky that, the game went to overtime and they got their chance to get their hands on the ball after, as you mentioned, the botched snap and the missed field goal by the normally very reliable Evan McPherson. And then all you have to do is get into Tucker's range, which that isn't too difficult to
Shaky.
do, even if he's not as automatic as he once was. But yeah, I mean, offense is dominated. We know the kind of firepower these teams have, and it was really just a case of who was going to have the ball last, and the Ravens were fortunate to come out on top.
Yeah, the AFC North is interesting. I mean, there's a lot of interesting divisions across football right now, but I really look at it, right, because everyone, especially these Steeler fans, they're 3-0. Why is no one talking about us? Why are we not in the top 10 of power rankings? It's like because we watch the games and we know the Steelers' offense is not good. Okay, and then you look at other teams like the Bengals, you're like, they're 1-4 and their defense is really bad, but like, man, there's something about like this Joe Burrow offense. I just can't quit it. They're so good. And then you have like the Ravens
Yeah.
that are like they're good, but like they don't feel even as good as they were last year. There was definitely massive amounts of attrition on their defense, and then the Browns are just pitiful. I mean, so it's a really weird division. Somehow the Bengals, even at 1-4, I mean, obviously you got to start winning at some point. Like you have to beat other teams beside the Carolina Panthers, but it feels like they're somehow not out of it, even at 1-4. It's a really strange situation that is going on, and a guy that I've praised a ton past on this podcast, and Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator of the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm not saying it's all on him, but he's got to get something going. There's got to be different options here. And the Ravens and the Bengals, in a lot of ways, are very much mirror images of each other right now, in my mind. They've had a lot of attrition on the defensive side of the ball, and people said, it doesn't matter. They'll replace this guy or this guy. They haven't. They haven't. The Ravens lost, obviously, McDonald to the Seahawks and their defensive coordinator there. there's been a ton of players that the Bengals have lost over the last couple of years defensively because you got to keep paying these offensive players, or potentially paying them because they still haven't paid Chase, and Higgins is probably gone after this year. It's a problem, and you have to play some level of defense. I don't know if defense wins championships anymore because it's a very offensive league now, but you need to hold opponents consistently under 23 points or less. I mean, the Bengals at this point, you can't be giving up 35 points a week. It's impossible. And, Burrow's on that razor edge where he throws that one pick there, that bad pick he throws, and he knows it. He knows, damn, I might have just threw away the game there. Now, of course, they lose it later, but operating with that kind of margin, it's just not sustainable for winning football. And clearly, it's not working out.
Yeah, definitely the margin for error is so thin. So it's going to be interesting next for Cincinnati after that tough loss. They come and play the Giants, and suddenly the Giants aren't a laughing stock. They're
No.
playing competitive football. So you got a Sunday night game there that, was kind of interesting. I mean, Cincinnati goes in as the favorite, but who knows? This league on each week, I feel like it gets even more unpredictable. I mean, we like doing the picks, but this is a hard league to figure out right now.
It is, and I feel like in the last few years we've been really good around the 70 percentile we've scored in. I don't think we're going to be anywhere near this in picks this year. I mean, you look at right now through the first 5 weeks, the entire NFC, you could argue, outside of the Vikings, is terrible. I mean, they're average to disappointing to terrible. There's nothing going on.
Don't forget Washington. Give Washington
Right,
some
it's
credit.
how much do you trust them, I guess, in my mind. And then you have the Chiefs. Somehow they're still winning because of championship pedigree, but they're so banged up right over there. And then you have other teams like Texans are kind of disappointing. They're not what we thought. The Bills have come back to earth in the last couple of weeks. Do we trust the Ravens, especially defensively? It's just a weird thing going on right now. And hell, at the end of the day, this was a great game to watch, man. Of watching two juggernauts of the sport at the quarterback position, healthy, playing well. That's what we want to see. And it's a thing where I look at the Bengals as a final point and I go, man, I don't care how cheap the Brown family has been in the past. You better find a way to pay some of these guys like Chase and stuff like that. Figure it out. You want to keep this nucleus together, improve your defense. I know you're probably going to lose Higgins. You got to do something here because you don't want Joe Burrow on that contract just wasting away. It would be a shame if something like that happens.
Well, one final point on that game. There's one of my fantasy leagues where I'm in a 2-quarterback league.
Oh, okay.
My 2 quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow.
Having a great week. I'm assuming you won this week.
I did, and I'm now 5-0.
It's great, dude. I have never done a 2-quarterback league. I don't know how it feels. I did recently this year. I just had a league for the first time with no kicker, no defense, and even that's weird. So
yeah,
and
I still like having the kicker.
Yeah, I like having the kicker more than the defense, I think. But I also go, there's other leagues that are really in depth where they have individual defensive players. I don't think I would ever do that. It just seems strange.
No.
I don't know if I'm about that. Brian, let's switch over to another game of 2 AFC Titans that I just talked about. The Houston Texans and the Buffalo Bills. The Houston Texans hang on. We're 23-20 in this game. And, Brian, I'm going to start right at the end.
Yeah.
The Bills have the ball with about 41 seconds, give or take. Game is tied 20-20. They're backed up inside their own 10-yard line. Normal, I don't care what statistics say, normal football logic would dictate you're going to run the ball, make Houston waste their 3 timeouts. Maybe they get the ball with 10 to 12 seconds left. You punt it away. You play some prevent defense. They don't even get into field goal range. You play for overtime. Well, the Bills didn't do that, Brian. Joe Brady, offensive coordinator over there, and obviously Sean McDermott, who kind of seemed unhappy with it. It seemed like he had no control over those 3 plays of what's happening. They throw it all 3 times. Allen almost gets sacked for a safety in the end zone, 2 of those plays. Awful throws. I mean, Allen had probably the worst game of his career this past week. Knowing your quarterback is playing that poorly, knowing the field position, the time, everything going on, Houston has their timeouts, To make a decision like that, I'm watching it live. It was irresponsible. It was unprofessional. That's the stuff that gets you fired. It's doing something like that. Whether it's Brady or McDermott or both doing something like that. I couldn't believe that. And of course, yes, you could end up losing the game in overtime and all that stuff. But to not even give yourself a chance, I can't defend it in any way, any angle I think of it in my mind. I mean, watching that last sequence, what did you make of what the hell was going on there in Houston?
Yeah, I can't imagine there's anyone out there who was like, oh, they made the right call there, and it was just a matter of a lack of execution. No, I mean it just the play calling did not make any sense. And as I'm sure you were, I was watching Red Zone during the 1 o'clock wave, so we were focused on that, late in the 1 o'clock stretch, and it was just baffling uh, how they went about it there. I mean, they're backed up basically in their end zone, and they're throwing just wild
Yeah.
passes. But the other thing is that this was a game where they battled back from a big deficit, right? They were down, like, was it 20 to 3? I think they were down
Texans tried
double
to give away
digits.
the game. They tried to give away the game.
Yeah. And they come all the way back only to just give it away with mindless coaching and execution at the end. It just didn't make any sense. And then when they punt the ball after that awful sequence, the Texans get a little punt return. They're basically already in field goal range, and Fairbairn, I think it ended up being a long field goal. It was like 58 yards to win it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's another good, reliable
50,
kicker, and
59.
that's all it took. But yeah, 59. I mean, that is really a tough pill to swallow for the Bills, and they've lost a lot of the good mojo that they had earlier in the season now with these back-to-back losses, and a lot of questions now. Just how good is this team? Earlier on, they were playing like a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Now we're seeing this team doesn't look nearly as good, and definitely has some questions going forward.
This is why I told people to pump the brakes when they were 3-0, because I said, well, who's really been their competition? And now back-to-back weeks in kind of division, you would assume winners by the end of the season in the Ravens and the Texans, they've been bad. I mean, Allen, I believe this is the worst statistical completion percentage of over 20 attempts in a modern NFL game. He went 9 for 30, Bry. 9 for
And
30. That's under
it-
33%. That doesn't even seem
It's more
possible.
like it's more like a bad shooting night in the NBA than it is a quarterback number.
It's just I never thought I would not only see that in the NFL, but see it off of a player that I highly respect of this caliber. It was a pitiful game, by far the worst game of his career, and he also only threw for obviously 131 yards on the 9 completions. He's lucky he had that big touchdown that what was it 49 yards to Keon Coleman that kind of he broke loose down the sideline and got away. Otherwise, this game and also Stroud, he had a pick and a fumble there in the fourth quarter. They were trying to give them the game away. I just don't understand. We know they're banged up. We know they came in with no Shakir. We obviously Milano hasn't played this season. They're backed up in the secondary with tons of injuries. I understand all that stuff. But we talked about even coming into this, even at full strength, there's just a lack of weapons and talent on this team. And it can't be the Josh Allen Superman show. And even in this game, I thought it was a really, this is the thing that aggravates me sometimes, where the NFL preaches player safety, and he got his head whacked on the turf at one point in this game, hard. And he kind
Yeah.
of goes over to the blue tent, but he's not really in it, and then he's right back in the game. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I think, like, especially the way he was playing too, I'm like, are we sure this guy's not concussed? Like, I don't know if he should be out there right now. And that is the stuff that sometimes can aggravate me about the game, where they'll preach that player safety. They'll have these independent doctors on the sidelines and players and refs. If you see someone, you pull them off, and it's like, I mean, I've watched games before where guys are definitely concussed, and they did not do that. So I don't know if that attributed to it. I'm not going to make excuses. He played terribly, and the Texans haven't been overly impressive this season, but they add another win to their tally.
Yeah, I mean, they're 4-1, which looks good, but the one is an absolute blowout loss against the Vikings. And
Yep.
I know they're 5-0, but they kind of showed in that game that they clearly don't stack up with looks like one of the better teams in the league. So it kind of muddles the picture for Houston, and you wonder just
Yeah.
how good they are because the one good team they faced, they got outclassed. So yeah, I mean, they've had their ups and downs. I mean, Stroud did have his moments, and Nico Collins had a beautiful rainbow
That was
ball
great.
for like 50 yards, and then Collins ended up leaving with a hamstring, so I'm
Yeah,
not sure
which
about his
not
status going
not good.
forward. But he's kind of emerged as the guy now in that offense. I mean, Diggs plays a role. Tank Dell hasn't really had a
He
big
stepped back
season, but
so much.
Collins,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't really know he had a great rookie
I think it's
season,
a
so it's kind of a
rotation problem. They can't figure out who to feed the ball to with Diggs there now.
Nico Collins is an impressive player, so they better hope that he is healthy. And Joe Mixon too has now missed the
That's
last
hurt them
three
a
games.
lot.
You had your former Ram, Cam Akers, running the
Shout
backfield, and
out to
he scored a
Cam.
touchdown last week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cam two Achilles surgeries he's had in his career. Very happy to watch him going out there and contributing anyway. And also the Joe Mixon thing, that's an unfair one, right? Like he got injured basically on what should have been called a hip drop tackle. So that's
Mhm.
what's tough about that too. Again, you preach player safety and then you don't even call those plays. It can be aggravating. The Texans we've talked about before. We don't need to labor the point here. There's just something off about them. Like they have all this talent, like they just should be better and more dominant they are, and they're just not. I understand it's only 5 weeks, so I'm not panicking. They're 4-1. They're easily probably going to win this division. There's just something weird there. Like there's something going on there that just doesn't make a lot of sense going into the season, and maybe it's a rotational thing. Maybe it's putting in Diggs, and I think this offense is definitely different when Mixon's in there. So maybe they'll be fine as soon as he comes back, but it could also be a sophomore slump thing too with Shroud, where he just doesn't seem like he's as comfortable or as free flowing as he was last year. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah, I mean, last year too, he kind of used the tight end as a security blanket. Dalton Schultz
Yeah.
had probably his best year, and he hasn't really been much of a factor this season. So it's kind of confusing, in their passing attack. Who we said Collins has stepped up, but like, where is Tank Dell gone? Where is Schultz gone? The running back, it's been kind of a shuffling of the deck. So a lot of things they kind of need to figure out.
Yeah, I can't believe Allen was 9 for 30. It doesn't even make any sense, honestly.
That's
Like,
that's a number that I would expect from a Jet quarterback of seasons past.
yeah, like I
That's
look
what
at
I
the
would.
stat sheet and I go, "Oh, Tim Boyle threw that. Oh, yeah, that makes sense." Like
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
I can't believe that, and he has to have a massive bounce back game here coming up, and even going forward because his last couple weeks have been anything but excellent in top quarterback in the league.
And it won't be easy against the Jets because
No,
if there's
who
one thing
he's
they
not
do
played well
well, it's
against.
defend.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Allen has not played well. I mean, Zach Wilson beat him twice when he was quarterback in the Jets there, so it's not been a good look for him. But the final game that we wanted to touch on here from Week 5 was the Sunday night game, Cowboys Steelers. Cowboys end up coming back on a last gasp fourth quarter drive. Really, as the game is in the last 20 seconds or so, they win it 20-17, complete the comeback in a night that Dak Prescott was pretty bad. He missed some throws, had multiple turnovers. I believe he had 2 picks and a fumble. He was just not good. He was off. And we expected this Cowboys team to not be great. I believe we ended up both picking the Steelers. And yet somehow the Steelers, who lean on vaunted defense, allowed the Cowboys to dog walk them up the field. Only one throw to CeeDee Lamb. Basically used backup Tolbert, the wide receiver, who got hurt also on this drive, somehow ends up scoring the touchdown. And a game that was also delayed by about like 85 minutes or something like that due to lightning. I end up stupidly staying up and watching the whole game. So I'm up to almost 1 o'clock in the morning watching the game when I have work at 7. So that's how kind of that worked out. I suffered for the podcast here. But I couldn't believe really they drove it down. I mean, hats off to Dak. He completed the comeback. I'll give him all the credit in the world on a night that he really struggled. Looks like they can maybe get something going here with this Rico Dowell here at running back. But I came away from the game with still massive questions of both of these teams who now both sit at 3-2, and I don't really feel good about either one of them for their prospects of the season. Bri, how'd you feel about the Sunday night game that took place?
Yeah, definitely had a strange feel from the start. I mean, you mentioned the long delay. That's not something that you see very often in the NFL. I mean, the one place where it seems like there's an occasional delay would be like Tampa or maybe Miami. You
God
don't
bless
expect to
them.
see it in Pittsburgh, but yeah, the game started late and ended, like you said, probably what 12:45. I mean, a lot later than the typical
Yeah, I think it was
Sunday night game.
12:52 or something like that. I watched it till.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was kind of a tough watch. I mean, I didn't think either team
Yeah, it was.
played particularly well. It was strange with Dak that, like you pointed out, the turnovers, and he definitely had some bad ones, but he also made some big plays,
He
like to
did.
Tolbert, ended up with a big passing total, 352 with those two interceptions, and the one interception in the end zone that had Chris Collinsworth just completely baffled. I mean, I'm sure you heard the commentary there, and then you saw on the sideline with CD Lamb, and Dak was just like in his head
Yeah,
down. I
and
mean,
I
it
was
was
trying to
something.
read what he was like his lips were saying. Some people said that like he said subpar throw or something. So like
Right,
I
that
wasn't
that
really
seemed to be
sure
the
what he said.
overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like sometimes with lip reading, you can kind of tell what is being said, but that was one where it was like not quite sure. But I saw most people speculating it was, yeah, subpar throw, which maybe it was, maybe it
Yikes.
wasn't. But it was a bizarre play where he just tried to force the ball into the end zone, had no chance of
No.
completing it, and was easily picked off. But the a big takeaway I think for me is like the Cowboys came in very beat up on defense, right? Like
Yeah.
missing some of their best players. No Parsons, no DeMarcus Lawrence, no, Bland, who's been out the whole season. And their defense looked pretty good. Like they talked about on the broadcast how they were looking faster than usual. And I know they're going against a Steelers team that is not known for
Is
their offense
oh
by any
my.
stretch. But it felt like the Cowboy defense held up without a lot of key players. I mean, for the Steelers, like that's why I thought they were going to win the game. I thought they would be able to take advantage of all the
I
pieces
did too.
Dallas had out of the lineup, but instead it was a struggle for Justin Fields to move the football. I mean, he only goes for 131 yards, really just never got much going, and now the talk with the Steelers is how a quarterback change could
Here
be
we go.
coming, and after all, right, we might see Russell Wilson. Right now, I'd have to say, like, I can't blame him. I mean, Fields early on was playing well enough to win, wasn't turning the ball over, but at some point, it's like limited Russell Wilson. We know he's had great years. We know he's had the dramatic fall off, but I think they have to see what they have in him, and he's going to probably be in there sooner than later.
Yeah, I don't really know if he's a starting quarterback anymore, to be honest, but I don't think Justin Fields is one either. So it's a case of you have two quarterbacks, you have none, and that's very much what it feels like right now. I thought it was a little bit desperate, in my opinion. I'm sure you were watching the broadcast when, Collinsworth and them were talking about, like, oh, he still met with the Sunday night crew, Russell Wilson, and he even has like a catchphrase for what he'll say, something like "go for seven" or something referencing like trying to get the seventh Super Bowl for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm like, dude, you even haven't played a down of real football for this team. Like, shut up. Like, what is this? Like, I'm sick of just the like celebrity status thing that he has. I'm like, man, you have fallen off so bad. This is why teammates don't like you. Like, this is why you don't fit in places. And could he get thrown in there? Maybe, but like, I question his health. I definitely question his talent and his leadership. They're a mess right now. This is exactly why it kind of makes me chuckle. And it's no offense to Steeler fans. Every fan could get crazy, I understand, but it's like, this is why when you're 3-0, nobody cared. Like, we don't believe in you. Like, we know you're not going to win games when you go up against decent to great competition. We've seen it in back-to-back weeks. Like, they just don't have the offense to compete consistently on a high playoff trajectory level against teams in the AFC, especially. It's just not going to happen. And, I'll give Justin Field credit in the sense that did he have a great night? By no means. But when push came to shove, he did lead the go-ahead touchdown. He did make that play, and you would trust that TJ Watt in that defense, where TJ Watt was really the only one on that defense doing anything all night long, which was very surprising. Hightower, none of these guys, nobody was there. They let them go down the field, and then you have this great play by Roberts, I think it was number 50, jumps over the entire offensive line as the Cowboys are on the 1-yard line, hits Dowell in midair. I mean, those plays reminded me of like a Troy Polamalu back in the day. Ball comes out, fumble, and of course Dak is right there in a heads-up play, gets on it, and that was kind of the Steelers' last chance. A couple plays later, Tolbert, who looked injured, looked like he wasn't even going to be in on the play, somehow beats the corner on the crossing route for a touchdown. And I'm saying, and I said it tonight when we were watching the Met game, I think it was like number 28 for the Steelers, whatever. I'm like, you should cut that guy tomorrow. I mean, you let a guy who was hobbling beat you on a crossing route? You couldn't cover that dude on a 5-yard touchdown? I mean, that's just terrible. So, it's supposed to be their hallmark. It's supposed to be what Mike Tomlin is about. In the end, it was what cost them the game. When the Cowboys wasn't a field goal game, they needed a touchdown, and the Steelers blew it.
Yeah, I mean, with the Steelers, we know the whole thing with Tomlin is he's never had a losing record. You think that streak ends? I think they probably still find a way to squeeze out a 9-8.
I would not be surprised if I seen this team at 7-10 or 8-9. I think listen, maybe I'm wrong. I picked them as 4th in division. I think they'll probably end up 3rd, but because the Browns are just so bad. But I don't know. I just don't see anything that's trending in the correct direction for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I really don't.
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely a lot of concerns going in. Then they start 3-0, and it's like, oh, maybe they could have a big season. But I know right away you weren't buying it when we did our picks last week, and now suddenly 2 losses later, and a lot more questions.
And hey, in the final point, I'll say shout out to the Cowboys. You're injured. We didn't believe in you. I still don't believe in you in the couple games going forward. But hey, you get a win out of this while you try to get guys like Micah Parsons healthy. Win's a win is a win, right? So congrats to them and Dak for leading that comeback even on a rough night. Brian, let's speed through some of these picks here because we got to go to bed here. We start the Thursday night game in a couple nights, 8:15. Niners Seahawks, huge game where both teams going backwards. Seahawks, another team that I said don't believe in them, is 3-0. Lost to the Giants this week. Were basically dominated the whole game. Stayed in it, and then the Giants end up blocking a potential game-tying field goal kick at the end. Giants run that back for a touchdown. They win that one. They're on a 2-game losing streak. And the Niners, you look up, they're 2-3. The 2-3, Brian, right now. Losers of what, like 3 of the last 4 right now. They blow a lead at home to the Cardinals in the 4th quarter. A terrible loss. I mean, some of the plays Kyler made on 4th down were he's just throwing the ball up. It was like the meme of F it, somebody's down there and throwing it up, and they end up losing that game right at the end. Both teams a little bit in the spin here going into Thursday night's game on the short week in Seattle. Who you got?
Yeah, this is always an interesting matchup. I feel like these teams meet on Thursday night every season. I just can't wrap my head around the 49ers being 2-4. So I just think they're going to be able to get back to 500. They got Ayuk going in the last game. He had a huge day, while Debo had kind of a slow game. Purdy has played very well for the most part this season. Their defense, though, has been kind of leaky in spots. But I just think they're going to be able to get it done here and get to 3-3. Seattle, like you said, now back-to-back losses. Suddenly, they've kind of lost their mojo after the 3-0 start. So I think San Francisco is going to get them here.
I also have San Francisco in this game. It's not only I can't picture them at 2-4, I just believe at the end of the day they have better players for whatever they're struggling with. And the Seahawks on a short week, they're still very banged up on the defensive line. They're always banged up seemingly at offensive tackle. There's always even nagging injuries even when those guys play. And Brock Purdy, down game last week, but at the end of the day, I'm going to trust him more than Geno Smith, even up in Seattle there. I believe they have more firepower, and I think they're going to get the victory here. Hell, if they don't, Bry, man, that's going to be something we're going to talk about next week. But even if they get this win, they get back to 3-3. We're seeing the war tier of the Niners, we're seeing the wheels might start turning a little bit here and coming off, even if it's not this season, but for the future. They're in this 5 to 6 year window now of being consistently good, getting to the Super Bowl multiple times coming up short. They have the highest paid guys at several positions in all of football. At some point, the cap's not going to allow you to keep everybody. And with that Brock Purdy contract eventually looming, we might see a lot of talent start being devoid there in San Francisco. Bro, the Sunday games kick off with another London game. The 9:30 game there at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium over in London. Bears. Jags get on the board in a thriller last week against the Colts, get their first win. And the Bears, last couple of weeks, have looked pretty good. Back-to-back wins. Caleb seems like he is settling in more there. I'm going Chicago. I think Chicago just has the better defense. I haven't seen enough out of Trevor Lawrence this season. I know statistically he does play well in England. So I will give him credit on that. I won't be shocked if he somehow wins it. But for me, I think the Bears are a better team. I like the way Caleb has been settling in. I like that they're actually using DeAndre Swift in the way he's supposed to with outside zone runs. Give me the Bears.
Well, I guess it's a good thing that Trevor Lawrence has played well in England because he's certainly had a lot of chances. I mean, if there's one
Yeah.
team that's like England's team, it's
Yeah.
the Jaguars. I mean, how many games have they played
It's
over
true.
there? Last week, I said, right, break at the Jaguars to get their first win of the year. They did in
He
a
did.
shootout, outlasting the Colts. They did their best to give it away, right? Like Joe
Oh,
Flacco
my.
is making plays, got the game back tied, and then Jacksonville pulls it out. I'm going to take Jacksonville. I think they get a second straight win here. I think Lawrence has kind of turned his season around. He played very well last game, even in the losing effort in Houston the week before. He looked like he was getting on the right track. You saw the rookie receiver Robinson play well, Kirk get into the mix. I'm going to take a shot with England's team, the Jaguars, getting their second
Yeah,
straight win.
yeah, they might as well be England's team. And hell, maybe you're starting to believe they're a playoff team more than I am right now. But well, it remains to be seen what's going to happen over there in England. Excited for that one. The 1 o'clock games kick off with the Commanders and the Ravens. Man, this is going to be a lot of fun. You kind of have Lamar Jackson and maybe Lamar Jackson's future protege in Daniels right there. Two guys that have similar points of their game but are also unique in their own ways. Commanders coming in at 4-1, a surprising 4-1. Ravens at 3-2. Bri, who you got in this one?
Yeah, I mean this is really one of the marquee games of the week. I'm not sure many people would have thought so going
No.
in. Honestly, I feel like even if Washington keeps this game close, it bodes very well for them. I mean, I'm not going to pick them to win it as impressive as they've been. The Ravens at home, I think will get it done. But I think we've seen enough of Washington that it's not a fluke. Jaden Daniels is not a fluke. This guy is playing just tremendous football each game out there. I mean, the completion percentage is off the charts. Oh, I think it's kind of a shootout. You know, the Ravens coming off a game where they gave up a bundle of points. Washington's defense certainly doesn't scare anybody. It's probably a big day for
Yeah.
both quarterbacks, but in the end, too much Lamar. I think the Ravens get the edge.
I'm also going Baltimore. I believe this is. I don't think the Jaden Daniels thing is a fluke at all. I think he actually can end up being the best quarterback of this draft class. But I think this is a case of a little too soon. And I think the teacher is going to get the best of the student here, per se, in this moment. And I think Lamar, his experience, what they can do with Derrick Henry in the running game, what John Harbaugh can do, I think they'll get the better of Dan Quinn's squad here. And what could be another light show in this game? Would not be surprised if this is another 41-38 game, but give me the Ravens. Cardinals-Packers. Kind of fascinating game, right? Like, you got two quarterbacks in Kyler Murray and Jordan Love, both a little erratic at times, but man, they can make special plays. I mean, that play I thought was one of the plays of the weekend. Kyler Murray on that run that he has for a touchdown of over 40 yards. He's like 7 yards past the line of scrimmage, throws up the peace sign. The disrespect of that as he's running past 9 defenders and goes right to the end zone. You know, there's a lot of things I don't like about his temperament, but man, when he's playing his game like that, he's fun to watch. He really is. And I think this could be a really fascinating game going back and forth. But at the end of the day, I'm going to pick the Packers. I think they have the better culture there. I think they're more sustained with Matt LaFleur. We saw what he did with Malik Willis. You're getting through the warts here of getting Jordan Love back in the swing of things, and now coming home once again to Lambeau. I think the Packers knock off the Cardinals and what could be a really entertaining game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm taking the home team here. I mean, for Love, I think it's just about eliminating the awful plays. I mean, he
Yeah.
certainly can make a lot of good ones, but as you saw firsthand last week against the Rams, that mind-numbing decision to flip the ball out of the end zone for a pick six.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a play that a
he
lot of
panicked.
times a team doesn't recover from. I mean, the
Luckily, you
Packers
played
did,
the
and they had a
Rams.
big and as we know, your team ended up turning the ball over in the second half too many times, and the Packers came out to win the game. So I think getting back home here, I think they're the better team top to bottom. I think Love and company at Lambeau will get it done against Arizona. I'm with you with the pick here.
The Houston Texans visit the New England Patriots this week in a game where QB alert, Drake May starting for the New England Patriots. I mean, it's just kind of the way the NFL landscape works now, right? As much as they say, this guy's not going to play in his first year, we know they're going to. And, push comes to shove, guys, coaching and jobs are on the line, pressure is mounting in the media. Jacoby Brissett not getting it done, Drake May getting his first NFL start this week and going against the Houston Texans, where regardless of whether I think there's something amiss there or they just don't seem as good as they should be, I think they're going to roll the Patriots in Drake May's first start. Give me the Texans.
I do too. I think this is a game where we're going to see the Texans offense at their very best. I think they're going to be explosive, get all their big guns in the mix. Nico Collins, provided that he'll be on the field. Diggs, a big game I would expect. And I don't have very high expectations at this point for Drake May. I mean, the team around him is
I
not
feel
very
bad.
good. They told you basically that they don't think he's ready right now if
Yep.
he's not going to be your week one starter. So we know Jacoby Brissett isn't going to be the guy going forward, but you're probably best served to play him now than play a guy who's just not ready. I have a feeling this game is going to get out of hand. I'm taking Houston.
The Bucks and the Saints in an interesting divisional matchup. The Saints, Derek Carr out for a number of weeks. They said multiple weeks. Suffered an oblique injury last night in the Monday night game against the Kansas City Chiefs. That's a huge blow, Bry. Does not bode well for the Saints, who are off to the hottest, fastest start in the first 2 weeks. Now going against the Bucks here, who coming off a heartbreaking loss there against the Falcons. I'm taking the Bucks all the way. I know it's going to be a divisional game. Sometimes these games can be nip and tuck, but right now I got to trust the Bucks. More weapons, more stability. Give me them.
Yeah, you can't feel confident with a team that's going to be starting a backup quarterback, so I'm taking as well. Each time I watch Baker Mayfield play, I just come away more and more impressed. The guy is really just playing good football, even if his team doesn't always win, like that night game. They didn't beat the Falcons, but as I'm watching, I'm like, this is a real quarterback now.
Yeah,
He
for
really
sure.
has found it in Tampa. He's got a good infrastructure around him. Todd Bowles, I wasn't so sure of, early on in his coaching tenure there, but he seems to have kind of turned the corner. I think the Bucks will get it done.
Yeah, and also the Saints have not announced their starting quarterback this week. Could it be Jake Hayner? Could it be the rookie Spencer Rattler? Which, man, if we wind back the tape to predictions week on this podcast, there might be a certain someone that said Spencer Rattler, you're going to see him during this season. Might be coming this coming week. The Browns and the Eagles will play over in Philadelphia in a game where, God, are the Browns in an absolute tailspin right now. To me, you watch all the press conferences with Kevin Stefanski, seems like ownership and Jimmy Haslam is the one kind of pulling the strings there saying, hey, you better start Deshaun Watson, because it just does not make any sense why Stefanski, a two-time head coach of the year, would continually start this guy of how bad he has played, how bad his attitude has been. You've seen him walk off the field this week when Stefanski wanted to go for it on fourth down and he just walked off the field. There was a number of things going on there. I know the Eagles are a mess as well, but there's more stability there. I have no reason to trust the Cleveland Browns right now. Give me the Eagles.
Oh, I will say, I mean, the Eagles coming off their bye week, in the event that they lose this
Oh
game,
my
you just
lord.
saw. We just saw a head coaching change today that we documented at the top of the show. If they lose this game, I think Nick Sirianni gets the boot.
He could,
I
or
mean,
if
I
not,
don't
that
see.
seat is on fire that he'll be sitting on.
Yeah, I mean, like there's dysfunction with both of these teams. I mean, if anything, that's why the game is kind of fascinating. I mean, the
Yeah,
Eagles
it's
have
true.
are clearly better. I'm not sure about the status of their top two receivers who missed, the last couple of games with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. If they're in there, I have a feeling. I know Hurts hasn't played well, but if he has his top two weapons, they're going to be able to put up points against this dysfunctional Browns team. Dallas Goddard too has really gotten going their last couple of games. They just have too much firepower with Barkley in the backfield. They're their own worst enemy. I
Yeah,
mean, if
they
they
really
get
are.
out of their own way, they can beat anybody, and maybe the Browns will be the tonic that they need.
Yeah, right
My
now,
pick is the Eagles.
I figured that. Early reporting right now, even though it is not confirmed, is both of the wide receivers in Smith and Brown will be back for this game. But we're recording this on Tuesday night, so that could very well be downgraded and changed as the week goes on. Either way, they could have neither of those guys. I'm still picking the Eagles. Colts Titans in a game where, hey, come wild card time, come trying to get second in the division, could be an interesting game here and a game that is meaningful. I don't know what's going on. I don't know the exact story on is Will Levis going to start in this game. The Colts, maybe Flacco's going to start. Is Richardson going to be healthy? I mean, there's a lot of. We're getting to that time of the year about halfway through, about a third way through the season, getting closer to the halfway point of the season where quarterback injuries are really starting to mount, and we're seeing a lot of backups. This could be a mess of a game. I don't know how entertaining it's going to be, but at the end of the day, I'm going to take old man Joe Flacco right now. The way this man's playing, how he's jiving, I'm going to take him in what's going to be a game of maybe 20-17. But give me the Colts again. Hey, if I get burned 2 weeks in a row, I get burned 2 weeks in a row.
I honestly believe Flacco is a better quarterback now than he was in the post Super Bowl days
It's
with the
crazy,
Ravens.
isn't it?
Remember those last couple of years in Baltimore? He just did not look good
No.
at all. I mean, he got paid the big contract, and honestly, he looked like he kind of mailed it in. I mean, he
Yeah.
did not look like a very good quarterback. And now we've seen him kind of bounce around. I mean, of course, it wasn't great with the Jets, but he had the nice story with the Browns last year. And now with the Colts, I mean, he looks rejuvenated. He looks like, the prime Flacco back when he was slinging it in the early days in Baltimore. So you got to give him a lot of credit. I'm going to take a stab with Tennessee in this game. I
Okay.
just feel like the Colts, a lot of questions. I don't know about Jonathan Taylor's status, who missed the last game. Uh, Tennessee can be plucky at times. They pulled one out there in Miami. Of course, do I feel great about it? No, it's a divisional game. It's basically a flip of a coin, but I'm going to take the home team.
Yeah, right now both quarterbacks is what I'm seeing is they're in the air. I mean, they said Levis is supposed to practice this week. We'll have to see about that. I mean, it's still so early in the week. Taylor, as of yesterday, said he's feeling good. He's a questionable player. And they also said Steichen came out, the head coach of the Colts, said, yeah, Anthony Richardson, when he's healthy, is our starter. They don't know if he's going to be healthy this week. So we're recording this earlier than we usually are. So we apologize if some of these guys end up starting or not starting. But at the moment, very questionable for all those players there. So it's really a crapshoot of a game in a divisional game.
Yeah.
The 405 games kick off with the Chargers and the Broncos. And the Chargers, you want to talk about a team that is banged up. It's so unfortunate because you could see what Jim Harbaugh's vision is. You could see what this team could be, but it's like, once again, these guys and Bosa and everybody are just, and Derwin James, like they're always hurt all the time. Shout out to Khalil Mack. He's been playing great. And even, obviously, at the most important position in quarterback, Herbert has been hurt all season long, dealing with that nagging kind of plantar fascia foot injury there. And then the Broncos, all of a sudden, woken up a little bit, have been playing stellar defense. Pat Surtain out of his mind right now. And Bo Nix, yeah, he didn't have a great game against the Jets that they won. Came back, he's looked good against the Bucks. Looked good last week against the Raiders as well. Had a little bit of a spat with Sean Payton on the sideline, but that kind of strikes me as Sean Payton's kind of a little bit aggressive, kind of confrontational personality. They seem to be all good. I'm going to take the Broncos in this one. I just think they're playing super well right now, and I think they're going to get the best of a very injured Chargers team.
An interesting call there. And in the aftermath of that spat between coach and quarterback, I don't know if you caught it, but I just found it funny that Sean Payton was like, "Yeah, I love Bo Nix to death, but
Oh,
we got to
Ferris Bueller.
eliminate the Ferris Bueller."
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a funny
Yeah, I thought that was
comment from
interesting.
him. And then, of course, they asked Nix about it too. I'm gonna take the Chargers. I mean, I kind of like your pick here, but Chargers coming off the bye, extra time to get ready. I know they're banged up as they always seem to be, but I think they're a little better. I think they've turned a corner slightly with the new coaching change there with Harbaugh taking over. Yeah, it's minimal, but it's enough to notice, I would say. And the Broncos, they have won three in a row. They've looked impressive. I don't see this team, continuing this big winning streak. I think it's going to come to a stop at some point, and I'm going to say it happens here at the hands of the Chargers. So give me LA.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if the Chargers won this one. And it's just, I think over the next couple of years, you're going to see Harbaugh get a lot of his guys in there. But right now, I just think they're very banged up. And Mile High is a tough place to play. The Steelers and the Raiders play the other 4:05 game in a game where, I mean, the Raiders openly have said they, have no idea who's going to quarterback here as well. Gardner Minshew replaced with Aiden O'Connell during last week's blowout loss. The Steelers, are they going to start Russell Wilson this week? Who knows? I mean, we're really in that time of who the hell is playing quarterback come into week in and week out for a lot of these teams. This is another toss-up game, but I believe the better players here are with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I believe they will figure it out no matter who is quarterbacking, and it was going to be more than likely an extremely ugly 13-10 game. Give me the Steelers.
That is exactly the score that just popped into my head. So I'm going 13-10, but I'm going to take the Raiders
Aye.
to get the win. I mean, do I feel confident? No. I mean, this is a second straight week. Like last week when we picked the Raiders Broncos, I was like, I don't know what to do with this game. Raiders scored the first touchdown, and then Denver pretty much controlled the rest of the game. It was not particularly close. Raiders have played fairly well at home. The Steelers are struggling. I mean, both teams, it's kind of like, what, like
Who
what to do
cares?
with them. Um, yeah. So you're going 13-10 Steelers. I'll take the Raiders by the same score.
All I'm saying is, listen, the Rams are really bad right now, but Brock Bowers, the Rams tried to draft him. He's had a great season. He'd be having a lot better time in LA right now, and I believe that team would have another win or so under their belt if he was there. Just saying that. The 425 games kick off with the Falcons and the Panthers kind of a little bit of their fun mojo kind of has come to an end in the last couple weeks. And the Falcons have been playing decent. Kirk Cousins, we talked about at length his Thursday night 500-yard performance last week. I'm taking the Falcons. I know these division games could get weird and maybe the Panthers could pull something out of the bag, but they're not a good team. Let's not pretend that they are right now, regardless of who's starting at quarterback. I'm taking Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm taking Atlanta. I kind of think it will actually be close with the
I can
factor of
see
it
that.
being in the division. And the Panthers have generated this running game with Chuba Hubbard
He's been
lately.
good, man.
He really has. He's played very well. So I think the Falcons pull it out. I mean, definitely got their offense going in a big way last game. So I think they win, but I think Carolina hangs around. So I think it's, within a touchdown.
The final four 25 games, the Lions, Cowboys, and what could be the game of the week up there with the Ravens and the Commanders. I think this could be a really exciting one, but the issue is the Cowboys super injured. I think the Lions, they're hitting their stride. They're playing well. I'm taking them in kind of a mini revenge game, given that the refs kind of botched their game last year that they probably should have won. Credit to the Cowboys last week. They escaped Pittsburgh with a come from win, but this Lions team is a completely different animal than what you just saw in the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Game of the Lions.
Yeah, this should be a very good game. I'm going the other way because to me, with the Cowboys, they wilt when the pressure is on them, when everybody expects them to perform well. That's a lot of times when you get the
Fair.
stinker. Now you get them in a spot where they're at home, they're an underdog, and coming off a game where they play very spirited in Pittsburgh. I think here at home they're going to be able to pull this one off. I think it's a better day for their offense. I think CD Lamb really gets going. Hasn't really had a vintage CD Lamb kind of game yet. I think that comes this week. The Cowboys, get a big play from their undermanned defense and pull this one out. I think it's a good game all the way through, but give me Dallas.
Lions only a 3-point favorite in most betting circles around the league. The Sunday night game is the Bengals and the Giants, which we hinted at a little bit earlier. Bengals, I mean, come on, man. You're 1-4. At some point, you need to win games, or you're going to be in the top 5 in draft picks. And the Giants have been playing spirited. Outside of a couple games here, particularly week 1, they've played well. They have won games, even against Seattle, you would imagine, that they should not have won. And I like what they have on both the offensive and defensive lines. I said that even coming into the season. And to all his credit, Daniel Jones, he's not going to lead you to a Super Bowl. He's probably not going to lead you to the playoffs, but he's played okay. Like, he did it without Singletary and Neighbors last week in Seattle. They have made something of guys like Wan'Dale Robinson. I have liked what's been going on there. This is why I like Daboll as head coach, and I believe if he had a better quarterback there, this Giants team could be formidable. But in this one, I'm taking the Bengals. I just think that offense is too overwhelming. I don't think they're going to be able to stop them. And I think better quarterback in a desperate spot. The Bengals have to start winning. Give me Joe and the Bengals.
Yeah, so we've had a few disagreements, but we're on the same page here. I mean, all due respect to the Giants, and it's been impressive. I mean, with the way they played, and I agree with your take that the way they played shows that Daboll belongs as this team's coach. Because if he didn't, that would have been a game on Sunday where they go out in Seattle, with an undermanned offense where they're missing key players, the guy who basically was keeping their offense afloat in Malik Neighbors. That's why I thought it wasn't going to be the Giants' day. I thought Seattle would win that game handily, and instead they controlled the game. Jones played well enough. The defense came up clutch with some plays late, and, they won, but I think they're going to be outmatched here by a Cincinnati team that's very hungry, that knows it can't dig their hole any deeper than 1-4, and that even with that record, they have a very potent offense and a quarterback who is playing at the top of the league level right now with Burrow. So I think it's going to be too much for their defense to withstand. I'm taking Cincy.
And the final game, Bri, is the Monday night game in East Rutherford. Bills, Jets. For first place in the division, believe it or not. Bills 3-2, 2 straight losses. Jets 2-3, 2 straight losses, just coming back from London, just coming back from firing their head coach. Bri, does the interim head coach, Jeff Ulbrich, get a win in his debut? I'll leave it to you, man.
Yeah, I mean, I know you could make the argument that you make the coaching change and it really fires up the team and you get this big effort in a game that you need to win against a divisional opponent, the team that you beat week 1 on your home field last year, the game that Rodgers went down. So if there's anyone who's motivated in a game like this, it's going to be the quarterback himself. I don't trust it. I just don't trust it right now. I think there are deep-seated issues with this organization. The head coach was definitely a problem. I'm not saying he wasn't, but I don't think by making the change it all of a sudden changes that things that much. I mean, this team will win its share of games. I think the Bills, even though they've been disappointing over the last couple of weeks, are still a pretty good team. It's going to be better on offense with Shakir in the lineup. I just have to believe Allen's going to play better. I mean, he's got to play better than he did last week, and I think we'll be determined to do so. And I just think the Jets are going to look a little defeated out there, honestly. I just don't trust them right now, and I'm taking the Bills.
I'm gonna go on the other side of this. I'm actually gonna take your New York Jets. I believe they are gonna get a little bit of the interim head coach bump in this game. I believe there's going to be a renewed energy. And you know what? I'm a guy that I like to look at trends. I like to look at patterns and statistics. This Jets defense has absolutely bewildered Josh Allen. He's coming off a game where it's his worst game of his career. He's not going to have that kind of game. But there is still a lack of weapons here. Shakir's status is going to be up in the air all week. I don't know. Ulbrich is the defensive coordinator. It's the same system. I think he could give Allen the same trouble, and I think in the back of Rodgers' mind, low ankle sprain or not, you can't have the Jets fan base and the media go, well, Zach Wilson beat this guy twice, and now this guy is supposed to be the savior. He couldn't win. That is a huge deal that's going on there. This is a huge game. In my mind, the Jets lose this game, the season is over. Like, this is a moment that you need to make a turn to show that they have responded to the firing of a head coach and that there is still a chance this season. And I believe that place is going to be rocking. It's going to be crazy. The game will be tight. It's not going to be a blowout, but I think the Jets are going to pull it off somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 20-16. I'm going to take the Jets in this one.
Well, I like your pick there. I mean, obviously, I hope you're right. I think you backed it up very well. I just don't trust the team right now.
That's fair.
That's what it comes down to.
You've been burned too many times, my friend. Too many times.
Been burned too many times. That is it.
Of course, as Brian pointed out last week, and I should be doing every week now that we're on the buys for the teams. The buys this week, of course, Dolphins, Vikings, the 5-0 Skull Vikings there. The Rams, whose season is over, and then the Chiefs are all on the bye. So the two undefeated teams not playing this week, so there will be no changes there at the top of the league in each conference. And yeah, some other teams that are struggling in the Rams and the Dolphins as well. Yeah, it's tough out here being a Rams fan. That's all I'll say. I'm really happy we can't lose this week. I'm really excited about that fact. But guys,
you told me last week I picked your team in the game against the Packers, and as I was making my case, you're like, "Don't do it, don't do it."
I told you not to. LaFleur now 5-0 against Sean McVay. There's certain coaches he can't beat. The team's devoid of talent, and they're injured. I mean, at some point, you can't keep relying on guys from the 5th round to undrafted free agents, less need, and expecting them to perform. It's not good enough. You know, hey, maybe we get a top pick, and, you know, I don't think we're going to get a quarterback, but maybe we get Travis Hunter, you know, and we get some guy with, like, a ridiculous infusion of talent that could play both sides of the ball. Yeah, it's tough times in LA right now. It really is hard. But guys, that wraps up our show here. We need to go to bed. It is late. Thank you all for being here. If you watch so far, give us your picks and thoughts here. Coming up for week 6, the head coaching firing that went on with Robert Saleh, all the QB changes and question marks that are going on going into this week. A lot of crazy stuff. And hey, give a lot of shout outs to guys like Drake May, man. Hope you play well. And I did want to say, just finally on a serious note, for the people in Florida, Hurricane Milton kind of coming towards them, games and stuff, none of that matters here for NFL football or anything like that. I pray for those people. Hopefully everyone can be safe, get evacuated, or at least bunker down. And if you are someone who is watching this, I hope you're okay. I hope things go well. It's supposed to be a very dangerous storm, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say that before the show ended. So I just want to give that. And Brian, any other final thoughts before we get out of here?
Well, we mentioned at the top of the show, on the baseball note, I will be in the ballpark tomorrow for Game 4, so can't wait for that. And otherwise, get ready for another week of football. And I'm just glad that we've been able to do this each and every week. It has been so much fun talking about the games, and hopefully we can go through the whole season without missing a single week. That would be really good.
That is our goal. We've been doing it. We're 6 for 6, and I'm really excited about that, and I appreciate it. And of course, we appreciate all the support that we've gotten. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends if you'd be so kind. And until next week of First and 10, guys, thank you for watching.